Hello, I'd like to take a few minutes today to take a quick look at the cookiecutter-restful-elastalk template. This is a cookie cutter template designed around getting you set up with a Flask-RestPlus project using Elasticsearch as a backend. And if you're not familiar with Python cookie cutter templates, it's a great project and you'll definitely want to incorporate it into your toolbox. The general idea is, in a lot of cases, when you're setting up a brand new project, there's a lot of boilerplate stuff that you want to do. You want to, set up your unit test framework using PyTest or something, set up your linters, prepare for publishing and various types of local CI type operations, just all that stuff that you might otherwise manually put together. Cookie Cutter lets you templatize all that, and then when it's time to set up your new project, you answer a few questions, and then you get a very standard project that's ready to go when you are. And you can start focusing on your business logic right away. So this is early days for this template, but we'll just take a quick look, like I said, and do a walkthrough. It does use another project, the Elastalk project, which is really just a set of convenience functions for talking to Elasticsearch. Won't go too far into detail on that, but if you are looking at the cookie cutter RESTful elastalk GitHub repository, which is also where we're going to source this cookie cutter from, you will see that there are some links there if you'd like to learn more about that. So the first thing we're going to do is run cookie cutter, and we can actually do that directly from the GitHub repository. So we'll just say cookie cutter and paste in the link to the repository. And it'll ask us a few questions. I've downloaded this before, so it's asking me, hey, do you want to do this again? Yeah, we'll go ahead and do that again for this purpose. Okay, so first it's asking us for a project slug. This is what it's going to use as the top level directory name. Also, typically that's going to be what you'll use. This would be the name of the project as you might store it in GitHub. So I'm just going to call it my REST API. Okay, and then Python package names can't include that the dash there, so it's converted that to an underscore. I'm going to say, okay, my REST API, that's a fine package name. This application is also going to come with a click-based CLI, and we'll just be able to use that to run a couple of things. We'll be able to actually use it to run the server, but also to seed the database, that kind of thing. So that looks like an okay CLI name to me. Now just a couple standard things. The name of the API root folder is /API, project version 001. This is my RESTful API project. I can change the description here, but that looks like a pretty good default. Let's use Python 3.6, and my name is Pat Dabru, and I am Pat at dabru.net. This stuff will just go into headers in some of the files and the documentation, that kind of thing. We can select from different open source licenses here, or say no license. I'm going to say this is MIT licensed. My GitHub user is Pat Dabru. Okay, so now it's off and running. The files are in place. It's now doing some post-build stuff. There's a requirements.txt, and now it's installing all the requirements. And we'll just wait for that for a moment. Okay. All right, so it looks like things went okay, and you can see down there at the bottom, it tells us these are our next steps. So I'm going to cd into the folder. I'm going to activate the virtual environment. Okay, and as I said, there's a click API application here, so I can actually run my REST API and get some help. Okay, so there's command line help if we look down at the bottom here, we can see that our main commands that are most interesting, the subcommands are run and seed. So the first thing I'm going to do is seed my Elasticsearch database. If you're familiar with Elasticsearch, you'll know that you need to, in some cases, go ahead and set up the index. One of the things that this project does is it actually has a set of seed data. This is just testing data, and chances are you want to remove it, but the project contains it, demonstrates how you can modify it, but for purpose of demonstration, we can just go right to my, my REST API, which is the name of the application, and seed. I'm going to force it. I already have Elasticsearch running, and just occurred to me that I have run this before in the last couple minutes, so I'm going to use this force to say, okay, yeah, overwrite any previous seed data that was in there. And we'll just wait a moment. And so now what it's doing is it's creating the Elasticsearch index and then actually putting some seed data that's defined in the project itself. So at this point, we should be ready to run the application. My REST API run, it's going to use Unicorn, and we're running on port 4000. So if I go to localhost 4000, okay, so I get a default static web page as the index HTML, and if I go to API, here's our API using Swagger, so we have some things that we can test. We see we have a set of CRUD operations for something called languages. These are just the API by default comes with an example that includes a very trivial set of REST endpoints that you can use to manage popular programming languages. So we'll just look at the get here, and if we execute that, we'll see this is the seed data that was placed in the database when we ran that seed subcommand. But we can also we can add new ones, we can update an existing one, we can get a language, delete a language. There's a lot more to this. I will keep this brief, just sort of going through the process of running through the cookie cutter itself. And oops, so I just opened WebStorm. What I really wanted to do was open up PyCharm. And what we're going to do is go take a quick look. Whoops. Go look in our sandbox. I don't know if your sandbox looks like mine, but there tends to be a lot of stuff. Let's just go ahead and open it up in this window, and we can take a look at, oh, there's WebStorm. Thanks for showing up. But really what we want to do is look at our PyCharm project. So here's our project, and you can see it comes with requirements.txt. The files are laid out in a pretty standard fashion for a Flask REST API. Here's our languages API page with just quick demonstration for all of our REST points. Here's that seed data that we were talking about. These are static files, and this is mostly a function of just how Elastalk works. It has some conventions in it, and that's one of the things it's there for, is to be aware of the structure of a directory like this and to know how to convert it into Elasticsearch indexes and individual documents. So as we look down here, we can see, well, we've got mappings for our languages, and then actually some document files. There's one for Go, and there's one for Python. This project also includes a makefile that we can use to do a couple of interesting things. One of the things we can do is we can run the unit tests automatically. We can publish the package through the makefile. When I started talking, one of the things we were discussing was the Sphinx documentation. So again, this is early days for this project. I think we might have some rough edges like a Sphinx warning as we go along, but if I just come in here and use type make answers, what it should do is go through the documentation build process and bring it up. And then now what we have is a nice starter template with API documentation and everything for this particular project. So if we were to put this up in our source code repository, we would be ready to point something like read the docs or whatever we want to use to manage project documentation. That kind of thing is present and ready to go. We don't have to set it up. The cookie cutter has taken care of all that for us. So I will end it there for now. Thank you very much, and I hope this was interesting. I hope if you are thinking of using Flask-RestPlus and Elasticsearch on the back end, you may consider this cookie cutter template. Also, if you're interested, have suggestions or bug fixes or want to join the project, that's great as well. Thanks.